from the beginning, we're starting from a dejected work narrative. Mm-hmm. But what if we just took a step back to dream and say, what did work look like beforehand? What would it have looked like to work with God in the garden and plant seeds and marvel over rain falling from the sky and enjoy the fruits of our labor and enjoy that with someone else? We don't think about that.
Welcome to the Work Matters podcast, where we have conversations about the purpose and practice of work. Each week, you'll want to join us to hear from different leaders in different industries and roles wrestle over how their faith intersects their work. So let's dive in. Well, I love when we can get together as hosts and talk about what we're wrestling over in the office, conversations that we're having around faith and work. And one of the conversations that we've been talking about is story. What is the story that we tell ourselves about work? When I say that, what do you think of? Keisha, what comes to mind?
Okay, so what comes to mind for me is, when you hear something like over and over and over again, and lately for me, it has been the creation story and the fall of man and redemption and all of that. I feel like there's nowhere I can go where I do not hear this story. And every time I hear it, the same question comes to mind. When Adam and Eve were at their point of temptation and they were proposed the question of, is this true? Is this really what God was saying? Like, you can't eat from this? And they started having thoughts and a narrative started to build in their minds. My first thought is always, why didn't they just wait? They had these thoughts. There's no way that they could have known the depth of the consequence of their actions moving forward. I mean, none of us do know that. But they did know that God was going to come back and meet with them and spend time with them. And if they were having these thoughts in their mind, why didn't they just wait to ask, this is what I'm thinking. This is what we were told. Is this true? Or what are your intentions? Why can't we eat from here? What does that mean for us? But instead, they just acted instead of waiting. And so that makes me think of several things. It makes me think of, one, the power of the narrative, because you're talking about people who walked very intimately with God and knew his heart and experienced his love. And yet that narrative, whatever they grasped onto, took their actions a different way, away from him. So the power of holding on to those narratives, but then also the power of when those narratives spread, because it's not like there were a lot of people in the in the garden for the story to spread to. Right. But hey, 2 was enough. And just, how rapidly that gets away from us and changes, our entire situation and how that affects the workplace too. So when I hear what you're saying, my mind went to, wow, they started down a different narrative that then was given to them. And that took them on a trajectory that was not good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It changed their lives and the lives of everyone that came after them because they were believing the wrong narrative. Yes.
What did you hear when she was talking?
How quick we write the story.
Wow. Yeah.
We still do. We meet a new coworker and we don't like the way they're dressed or their first awkward interaction with us. We write a story about them in 20 seconds about who they are, what they value, what they're going to be like to work with, whether they should even be there. Like, how fast we write those stories just blows my mind.
Why do you think we do that? Why do you think that's where we go?
Well, in the Institute, we talk about being storied creatures. We're just wired to take in information and organize it in story form to make sense of the world around us. It is part of the beauty of being human, and at the same time, one of the challenges of being human. I think it's wired into all of us that we make sense out of things by writing stories in our head and living from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, okay, so Darrel, keep going with that. We're storied creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken a story about work and we've put it in our heart and mind, and we've written our own story about work. When I say that, and the people you've interacted with a lot of people over this, and you've heard a lot of people's narratives in their minds about what work is.
Yeah.
What is that? How does that hit with you? What do you notice?
Well, I'll throw one out, and then I'd like to hear the stories you've identified. Because they're usually half stories. They're not completely out there wrong. We're really good at taking some truth and just going with that. We live from a half story. We've met people who've lived from a victim story. Everything they do, they think about themselves, it's almost like they're just a result of what other people have done to them. So there's powerlessness, victimization. It's just some people, and often because they have been through some awful stuff, and they did get the short end of the stick, but that becomes the story they live from. So if someone else gets a promotion, somebody's always out for them. I was overlooked again. So I notice a victim story sometimes when I talk to people. What do you guys? What half stories do you think are popular in the work world today?
Okay, so there is one that I laugh about when I think about it. I've always met someone that's like, they really are working hard. They work all the time. There's no rest. They don't even sleep. And their response to me is, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
No.
I've heard that.
Have you heard that?
Yes.
I mean, I have heard that so much. I'll sleep when I'm dead. There's no time for rest now.
Yeah.
It's time to work.
Yeah.
There's a half truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if I'm being honest, I've probably thought that too.
Yeah.
I'll just rest later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to work.
Yeah.
Right now. That's a half truth.
Yeah.
It is.
Do you have one?
There's one I actually experienced maybe yesterday at work, or it popped in my head. We were having a meeting, and someone on our team, someone from another team came in to meet with our team. And at the end, our team lead said to her, I just want you to know that you are we consider you a part of us. We know you work for another team, but you're family for us. And I thought, man, how comforting it is to know that no matter where you go, you have a home with the people that you work with. It doesn't matter what location you're working at or where you go. And it had me thinking of the us versus them narrative that pops up at work. And that could be just outside of your team. It could be if you have different locations at work. It could be from industry to industry. Like, we are against them. We need to protect ourselves from you. But what a world we would live in if everybody was a we. And we regarded each other with that respect.
Wow. Competitiveness in the workplace. Darrel, you and I have been talking about that. I just hear that here.
Yeah.
There's a us versus them.
Yep.
I'm watching you succeed. I need to succeed. I need to be better than.
Right.
You and I talk about that a lot, don't we?
Yeah. It's that predatory competition is a real thing. That I can't just strive to be the best that I can be. I have to strive to be better than you.
Yeah.
And that's where ambition kind of takes a bad turn.
It does. It does. Another half truth, and in a book I'm reading right now, pray like everything depends on God, but work as if everything depends on you. A half truth.
Yeah.
I believe that. I've probably quoted that many times. And then the author said, we need to pray because everything does depend on God, and work because everything depends on God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the first version sounds pretty attractive, doesn't it?
Extremely, especially in our competitive world.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does.
Yeah. That reminds me of the other half story that I see a lot is kind of the bootstrap story, that it's up to me.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need anybody. I can handle it. I can do it. Whatever the it is, they're living with this. It's up to me. Yeah. And I've got to prove something with it.
Yeah.
I also think of work as something that I have to get through. I have to finish it, and then my life can start.
Yeah.
Which is a very, like, I'm going to suffer through it, or work is happening to me and not a part of who I am. Work will end one day, and that's when life will get good.
Right. Well, Darrel, you've given a talk before in front of a bunch of college students, and you start off the talk telling them.
Yeah, I ask him. It's the story we tell.
Yeah, tell that.
Yeah.
To our audience.
So it's really fun. I actually stole it from Tony Campolo, who told it on our campus in 1984.
Wow.
So fortunately, that's a long time ago, and I don't have to credit him to college students now. But, so you kind of engage them in your talk, and I would just shout out, the people who love you, your parents, your teachers, they all said, you really need to do well in school so you can. And everybody just yells, get into a good college.
Yeah.
And then I know I've got them. And I said, well, and you need to do well in college so you can. And everybody yells out, get a good job. And I said, you need a good job so you can. And they all yell, make a lot of money.
Yes.
And that's the story that often, and we enter the workforce telling that story to ourselves. It's going to be a kind of a hollow 30 or 40 years of work, because it's
to make a lot of money.
True.
And then it goes back to Keisha's, so that I don't have to work anymore.
Yeah. Or I can buy a lot of stuff.
Or I can buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the happiness, the half truth. And it's true. I mean, we work, and God provides for us through what we do, and we can pay our bills. And so it is a half truth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I read something from someone who said it much better than I can? This is in our Work Matters Institute participant guidebook. James Bryan Smith put it this way: narrative is the central function of the human mind. We turn everything into a story in order to make sense of life. We dream in narratives, daydream in narratives, remember, anticipate, hope, despair, believe, doubt, plan, revise, criticize, construct, gossip, learn, hate, and love by narrative. In fact, we cannot avoid it. We're storied creatures. Our stories help us navigate our world, to understand right and wrong, and to provide meaning. We're shaped by our stories. In fact, our stories, once in place, determine much of our behavior without regard to the accuracy or their helpfulness. Once these stories are stored in our minds, they stay there largely unchallenged until we die. And here's the main point: these narratives are running and often ruining our lives. That's why it's crucial to get the right narratives.
Wow.
That they can be more powerful, more formative in our life than our stated beliefs. That we can talk about the love of God. We can affirm the sufficiency of Christ's grace. We can, state all these beliefs, and yet the stories that are running in the background, kind of that operating system that's happening, have far more influence on us than our stated beliefs. That's powerful.
That is very powerful.
Did any phrase jump out at you guys when I read that?
A couple did for me. I mean, that we're storied creatures. And I mean, God's word it's a story. It's a beautiful word. It's God's story, right? And Jesus often, when he was making a point, he would tell it through story. So what I find interesting about the quote and that hit me was, oh my gosh, what narratives have I told myself over 30 years of a career of work that took me down a path I should have never gone down?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about when I was working and I was in sales and I was traveling, and Betsy and I had a bunch of kids, and it was just a really hard season. And I was watching the Food Network. And as I was watching the Food Network, I was mesmerized by the restaurant stuff and the restaurant and redoing a restaurant and all this stuff. And I looked and I just found it fascinating. And then I thought, man, if I could just do that, that would make a name for me, and I could really do something with that. And so this narrative started playing in my mind. And so what did I do? I went and sold everything practically and got into the restaurant industry.
Wow.
6 years later, it was a total failure. Now, God was gracious. I learned so much through that process, and God provided for us in that season of life. But the narrative that I was telling myself, if I could just get here, boy, did it bring a lot of pain and ruin to our family and to me in a lot of ways, because the narrative in my mind was off about work.
Yeah. Wow. How about you, Keisha? Did anything jump out at you in that quote about story?
Inevitable.
Ooh.
Like, you cannot escape the fact that stories will be shaped.
Uh-huh.
And man, that's just a scary thought, because if you're always within a story, then if it's been the same story for all of my life, so let's say I grew up in a household where, my family enjoyed their work and work was something to be proud of, then that's something that has shaped me, something that I've always known. But if I grew up in the opposite household where I am just working to retirement, then that's what I know. And maybe I get around people that they're just working to retirement, then that's all that I see. Like, that narrative is being reinforced. So how do I even know through these inevitable stories that I'm always living in if the story is true or not? How do I know that I'm living in an unhealthy narrative?
Yeah.
That's what I
love that, which is a perfect transition.
Yeah.
So what is the right story about work? At Work Matters, we talk about the right story.
We do.
We get people in the room that talk about the right story. But get us started, Darrel. What is the right story of work?
Yeah. Well, a good story, an accurate story, starts in the right place. And our story about work starts in Genesis 1 with creation. And you alluded to it, that we meet God as a worker, that work is given to humanity as a gift. That is our primary way of collaborating with God to bring goodness and flourishing to the world. That work is good. That's how the story begins. That a loving God creates out of love and invites us with love to care about the things he cares about. That's like chapter 1.
But we don't tend to start the story
We
there.
don't. We start in what we would say is chapter 2. This Genesis 3 idea that the world has fallen. It's broken. We're surrounded by mess, broken systems, broken people. And that's a reality. That's the second chapter of this story we tell about work. That's where we find out that work got hard because of human rebellion. Thorns and thistles. It's hard to imagine work without the sweat and toil and thorns and thistles, isn't it? It's very difficult to separate those things. And so humanity took on this role of sweat and toil in the brokenness that surrounded them. As humanity continues, you get to Genesis 11, and the people in Babel decide to make this giant tower with their work. New technology. I mean, we don't think of bricks as new technology, but it was for them. Great collaboration, this huge community event. But do you remember why they said they were building this tower?
Why?
To make a great name for ourselves.
Wow.
And so here we have people that were consumed by notoriety in their work.
Wow.
And we probably still meet people who see work as a means to make a name for themselves, which is a half story they're telling.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anything you would add? I mean, you've been through this a number of times. What comes to mind as far as those first 2 chapters of the story we tell about work?
Actually, something that triggered a thought in me from what you just said was we start from chapter 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, that's true. Even when, just different settings that I've been in, we start because we're trying to establish this is why we need Jesus, is because of the fallen state that we're in. But we never talk about the glory that was before.
Sure.
We never dream about how beautiful it was.
Yeah.
And so we're starting from a more dejected place. And in our work narratives, that's that story that we're living in, that we don't realize that we're living in, that from the beginning, we're starting from a dejected work narrative. But what if we just took a step back to dream and say, what did work look like beforehand? What would it have looked like to work with God in the garden and plant seeds and marvel over rain falling from the sky and enjoy the fruits of our labor and enjoy that with someone else. We don't think about that because that, I think, informs what happens after the fall of coming to a place of redemption and then learning again to co-labor with Christ and with each other in that Eden space before the fall.
That third chapter of redemption that you took us to is, Jesus said that the kingdom of God is here. Repent and believe. And we often take that to only mean, I need to say I'm sorry for my sins so I can go to heaven someday. And that part's true. But when you think about the way Jesus approached the world and life and his whole teaching, this idea of repent and believe, he was saying, step back into the right participation that we originally intended for you.
Yeah.
Turn from this way of living from the fall and step back into participating with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that's just I'm grateful for personal salvation, of course. But man, when I think about the breadth of that type of understanding of redemption, that really changes my perspective on what story I'm telling about work.
Yeah.
You and I talk about Ephesians 2:10. And really that Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10, and how most of us stop in verse 9, that by grace you've been saved. And yet there's a verse 10. So we've been saved from something for something. And in that verse 10, it says that we're God's workmanship. The word means work of art. And that we are saved to go and do good works, which he prepared beforehand for us to do. So it takes what we would consider a 3-chapter gospel, which is creation, fall, redemption, and adds a 4th chapter to it.
Yeah.
And that's renewal.
Yeah.
Talk about renewal.
Yeah. I think, and that goes back to that question of, okay, well, maybe I've gotten to a space where I've noticed I have a broken view of work. And there are the go-to steps of just get in the word and, renew your mind. And that sounds fantastic. And I think that there are probably some practical things that we can do to learn to walk with Jesus in that renewal, renewal of our minds and hearts, and seeing work differently. For me, it has been learning to notice, learning to be aware of what's happening within myself while I'm at work. So even the conversation that I talked about earlier with the team member saying, hey, you have a home with us, that sparked something in me. And if I had just left it, I would just, that was sweet. But there was something more. I was like, man, why do I feel that way? Of everything that was said in the meeting, why did that stand out to me? And that led me to, I have a us versus them mentality myself. I wasn't just speaking for everybody else. That was a Keisha thing. And then I can take that to God in prayer and say, okay, Jesus, help me, lead me in how do we heal this part of me that it's broken when it comes to work. And so I think learning to be aware of those moments where something stands out. There's a book I was reading that says when you're attracted to things, happenings like that, you're attracted to the holiness within somebody else, which is basically your spirit recognizing God in someone, the wanting, the desire for being like God. And so that's just a call to unity. That was a call for unity in my spirit that is something very much of God.
What I love about what you're talking about is because when we talk about renewal, we talk about the idea that our work that we're doing now carries into eternity, and the relationship and the connection you felt with God's movement in someone else, that carries into eternity, that the work we do now matters. Those half-truths we talked about earlier, we tend to be like, work really doesn't matter. It's just a job.
Yeah.
But when you think about it through the 4-chapter gospel of creation, fall, redemption, and renewal, work begins to matter because it carries us into eternity, and we are workers still. We're God's vice regents. We are his image bearers, continuing the creation that he started. Yeah. Now, the kingdom come now into eternity, which will be here.
Yeah.
That's
how we say.
How would you add to that?
Oh, yeah. All those beautiful verses of Paul, like, to labor in the Lord, your labor is not in vain. Is more than just getting you through a tough day. That I have an eternal perspective on that now.
Yeah.
When I understand a full 4-chapter gospel story.
Yeah.
God won't forget the work of your hands, whether we're providing food for the world and the pets that we love, like your company.
Yep.
Or building homes for people that trying to buy their first house, or medicine, or teaching. God doesn't forget those things.
No,
he perfects those things. And, to think, I was handed the version of heaven that someday I would sing for all eternity, and that did not sound like heaven to me. But the idea of working into the age to come, meaning we will have opportunities to contribute to this forever kingdom, and interacting with God on a production kind of way, of bringing fullness in collaboration with him. It's just, I can't describe it all, but that glimpse that I can get my head around has really changed my perspective.
So I want to think differently about work. I want to change the narrative. Let's just wrap up with our audience with a couple. What do I do? How do I start thinking differently? How do I see coding AI to help a company better do what they do? How do I start seeing that as something redemptive and renewing for eternity? What's a first step I could take? Give me a couple thoughts.
First thing that comes to my mind is mentor, which I feel like I heard at the conference quite a bit, but find someone that lives that out, lives out joy in their work, living for Jesus and what they do. And they're actually living it. Okay. Connect with them, have conversations with them. It doesn't have to be anything like over the top, but I study people like that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's really good. Totally agree. Reminders. We're forgetful people. And I think of, the ancient Jewish people and their phylacteries and the fringe and all the things that reminded them of God's love, interest, and nearness to them. Yeah. And so in your cube, how are you going to remind yourself that this is a love story that God invites you into, and what you're doing right now is a component, maybe even a small component, of bringing God's kingdom to earth? And I think if we can figure out what can remind me of the right story, that's the first thing I think too that I would say.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna give a plug, right, for what we do at Work Matters and the Work Matters Institute, which is a experience that you can go through. It's a 10-session experience you can go through that really starts rewiring, and we talked about that earlier, just rewiring the way I see work, the way I think about work, the way I think God sees work. I need to go through something like that. I need to read a book on that. I need to sit around people. I need to go to a conference that's talking about that. I need to listen to the Work Matters podcast on a regular basis to keep it in front of me. I need to read the blog or the YouVersion study that we do. It's just because that narrative, we're forgetful people. We will go back to it. Yeah. And then I need to be around someone who's trying to do this. I need to see how they do it. How do they write AI for an eternal purpose? How do they do spreadsheets to the best of their ability for the glory of God? How do they live out their faith while they're making coffee at the local coffee shop? What is that? I need to just experience that with others, hear how others are doing it. And obviously we provide that space as well, but you have to go look for that person. and you got to put out those reminders. Would that be accurate?
Mhm.
Yep, agree.
Yeah. Now, there you go. That's a way to get started, folks. And so I want to end with this. We always end with a couple of rapid fire questions. I didn't tell you what I was
No.
going to ask
No.
you. So we'll see how you respond. They're easy. I promise. They're
Okay,
easy.
I trust
I
you.
said that to another guest and he was like, these aren't easy. Okay. But what is a good book that you have read lately or that you're reading right now?
Oh boy. Mine is Dr. Tammy, the one that she recommended, A Teachable Spirit.
Okay.
I'm listening to that.
You're
now.
listening to, that's right. I could have said you're listening, or what book are you listening to right now? Yes, that's very good,
I'm listening
Keisha.
to it.
Yeah, I love that.
Save
Okay.
People is next if for something new, but
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm reading The Active Life by Parker Palmer. It's not for senior citizens or anything. It kind of sounds like one of those. But he takes this whole Mary Martha idea that there are doers and there are contemplatives.
Okay.
And he says, yeah, we may lean one way or another, but those are two poles of the same thing, that we need to honor how he's created us and yet lean into the other one.
Yeah.
So that doers can't just continue to excuse their lack of contemplation or rest or any of those things because they're just doers.
That's good.
And those who come naturally to this contemplative way of being and thinking and pause can't just sit around all the time. They have to lean into doing. And so I really liked how it's a both and
That's cool.
that gives us that still honors how we were created.
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay, that could be a tough question too. Because you have to remember the book, the author, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so here's an easy question. Morning coffee or afternoon coffee? What's your preference?
well, by default, I can only handle morning coffee.
Okay. Darrel, what about you?
I usually partake of both, but morning is my favorite.
I knew that. Yeah, I knew that about you. Last thing real quick is favorite thing that you enjoy doing in Northwest Arkansas?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, you go.
I love riding my bike to dinner with my wife. We are fortunately close enough to downtown where we can pedal our way to the restaurant and not quite feel so guilty about going out to eat. So
I love that.
Really enjoy that.
I love that.
Along those lines, I just got back into jogging.
Oh,
And so jogging, and it's so scenic up here. It's
That's
my me
great.
time.
Great. Well, I want our audience just to get to know you two a little bit more as well. So thank you all for that. Thank you for this time. We're going to continue to do this periodically to just share with you all what we're wrestling over and why we're wrestling over it and what's going through the thoughts and minds of us as well as our staff at Work Matters. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to work on this narrative, I highly encourage you, go to workmatters.org, check out Work Matters Institute, check out the podcast, check out YouVersion and our studies there as well, because that's a great way for you to continue to keep that narrative changing in front of you about work. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Work Matters podcast. To continue this conversation about faith and work, please share it with a friend. Make sure you subscribe to get notifications when we launch new episodes. For more information about the work we're doing at Work Matters and how we can best serve you, visit us at workmatters.org.